It started in a little house on Almeda Street with Lori and I sharing poetry, and that was it. And then we decided reading to each other is fine, but we should go out and share something and listen to other people. We went to the Grasshopper. At the time, it was near campus. We went to the sub shop. We met John Swaile, and that was a massive change to the group. John Swaile is a force, was a force, and continues to be with us. Through the years, we met new writers. The group changed. The group grew big enough that we started reading at the Sam and the Andes Uptown Cafe. That was fantastic. It was every other week, I think, on Tuesdays. I think there had to have been more than 100 people, not at one time, but having read there. And overall, we came out with an anthology of people whoever wanted to put in who had read at Sam and Andes. It was a really nice book, and it was a fun experience. But as we had families, as people moved away, we kind of split up. A few years ago, I think Mike Hackney was the one who suggested we have a reunion reading. We get all back together. John Swaile, a bunch of us read at Artomatic, and it was just fun to get back together and share that again. Tonight, what we're going to be doing, aside from having another reading for from the Almeda Street Poets, we wanted to do something that John had gotten us into, I think. When you're going to have a meeting, you're going to get people together, why not add to it, do something that's kind of either socially responsible or something that works toward kindness, something that betters people. And I think that's a great idea. We had a reading a few years ago for Naomi House, which is a cool place in Toledo that is very helpful. Tonight we're doing a reading and trying to raise some money and some food and all sorts of stuff for the Cherry Street Mission. Cherry Street Mission has been around. I didn't know this. I always think it's always going to be around. I think that hopefully it will, but it needs support. They've been around since 1947 in Toledo. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I think that's fantastic and something that is noble, and it needs support. We need to keep it going. They get all of the money that they use to operate from churches, religious organizations, from private donations, and from fundraisers, and that's how they get everything they get. So little things like this, when I called them up and asked what they needed, I said, we're not going to generate thousands and thousands of dollars. What else do we do? We can offer other things. And they said, really what we need is food, canned food. Whatever you got, we'll appreciate. They serve 880 meals a day in Toledo. That's crazy. I don't know how they keep it up, but we're going to help out what we can. They don't just give necessity things like this day by day. They also give training, job readiness training, substance abuse and mental health assistance, GED preparation, and computer literacy courses. I think it's fantastic. So it's certainly something that deserves our support. Tonight we have a collection jar if you want to drop a couple dollars in.
We'll be back around.
We'll do it a few times through the evening if we can. And other ways that we figured we would do this. We're going to have a little toast. We used to drink wine in a box. I don't know why, we were young, but we sure did. And so we got a box of wine for tonight. And if you want to join in our toast here, we're just going to toast to I don't know what we're going to toast.
The first day of spring.
The first day of spring. We're going to toast to Mike Hackney's birthday as well.
Oh, yeah.
If anyone doesn't have wine, there's 4 on my table, and I don't need more.
She's very thirsty.
There's always plenty, which is the one great quality of Franzia. Yeah.
There's always more than you want.
Other ways that you can donate, not even just tonight. Well, one thing is you can, for a one-time $10 donation, if you have a phone and you can text the word CARE to 20222, and it will charge $10 to Cherry Street Mission. I think that's a neat idea. It's pretty easy. We're going to sell Girl Scout cookies. My daughter sells Girl Scout cookies. They're $3.50 a box. We're selling them for $5. So $3.50 goes to Girl Scouts, $1.50 goes to Cherry Street Mission. Mike Hackney is selling books in a manuscript.
Percentages go to the Cherry Street Mission as well.
Okay. What else is there? And then in the back there, Kerry brought in a bunch of books, and I think we have just a big stack of books over here. If you want one, put a donation in the little can back there, and there you go. And they're free to take. And she wants them out of her house anyway, so I think that's
Please
easy.
take them.
All right, so to get started, we are going to do a round robin reading. And our first reader is Mike Hackney.
Thank you. Just let me say a couple things. Just actually one thing. This is straight from my heart. It is my birthday today. That's why I set up this reading. Thank you. My wine glass is empty, so if anyone feels like buying me a glass of wine, that would be great.
Mike, I have a spare.
There's tons
There's
so much.
There's two on my table still.
I will take them. Thank you. I was going to get parched during the reading. Love song. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A breach. Queen of lazy hearts pulls herself upward to sit straight in Never Never Land. Tossing cabbage and unwanted flowers over bound body of lover boy who sowed wild oats in the cornfields. What strange new fascination lies in his bangle eyes, empty pocket, and the stars in his worn out shoes. He must be tossed to sea, but oh, so fresh is he lying on the butterscotch veranda of the dreamscape, were they to bask in light, the flesh would appeal. As is, tiny droplets of tin blood and stony soil keep them distanced, and needles to his open veins deserving of his lips. Thank you.
Oh, I'm next. Sorry.
Hi. Some friends mentioned their lack of sex, offhand, like a joke, but one that hardens behind the eyes, lava given over to obsidian. And I thought, what a waste. Two hot young folks like them, dry where slickness should be. No crescent fingernail gouges on ass cheeks, the necks unlicked, smooth shoulders unbitten, hips unclutched by quaking palms. Two souls who desire, deserve, sleeping thigh near cool thigh, each with only their own gravity pressing their flesh to the mattress, holding them there. If only we could... I'm sorry. If only we could give good friends the gift of sex. Not fuck them ourselves, but get them fucked. If only passion could be bestowed upon our fellow men and women like coins plinked into marble fountains, like wishes cast upon stars, settling downward in the form of hot breath on earlobes or fingertips, seeking, finding.
Some of the selections I made were inspired by or specifically written for people who we read with at Almeda Street. I'm starting with a poem that I feel like Arnie Kester would start with because it's the first day of spring. It's a spring poem. You know, Arnie always has those occasional.
Yes, it does. Every time.
No matter what you're doing, like we're donating shoes to an outreach for, you know, like crippled horses. And he's like, what? I have a poem about crippled horses. For this reading. And it's like, how did you know? So I'm reading a spring poem to start my set. It's called First Sign. Spurts of fire arrayed like candles in the red maple's lowest branches. You might give the old wives' tale undue credit. Call it springtime when you see them wandering like will-o'-the-wisps over wet lawns. You might expect them and other first signs of spring to lead you to vernal weather in whatever verdant wild place remains. But it's not the skunk cabbage calling the robins back to the Midwest, nor is it walleyes or maple sap running their hot green courses. Instead, it's one of late winter's tricks, a warm splash early in the year, changing into a cold smear of freezing rain. See them huddled, candescent as embers, staying warm by God, picking through winter wrack for berries, bark-covered invertebrates, their eggs, seeds other animals missed, praying in their high, sharp language for the ground to thaw so worms will flow. These wicks of fire spring has lit, oh, they sputter and dim, they flag, but no cloud cover can snuff them. They can't be subdued by wind. Under yew trees, in winter dark boughs, they flare up, they mutter and complain. They're waiting, too, for signs of spring to fly.
Yeah.
Okay, so in keeping with the spring theme, this is actually a Lori poem. And it's how to be a garden. Drink rain. Caress snails. Have your weeds pulled regularly. Realize when you're beat, B-E-E-T. Openly offer your ears. Revel in dirt. Use the worms of the world to your advantage. Lie around in sunshine daily. Drop everything that's rotten and let it be your fertilizer. Bend with the breeze. Scatter your seeds as far as you can. Grow in God's name. Never let the bugs get you down. Uproot yourself at least once a year. Provide pleasure to your keeper. Don't be afraid to leave. Allow yourself to be touched by green thumbs. Turnip your best side. Experience the manure of life. Always sleep in a bed of roses. Be the first step in creating things as sweet as honey. Remember that you can grow time, but you can't grow money. Bloom constantly. Make your own Eden. Nurture the smaller creatures. Keep in mind the us of lettuce. Have your only blade be that of grass. Let your only perimeters be drawn by flowers. Honor your mother, nature.
So I just scrambled to see if I had a spring poem in there, and I don't. I have autumn and winter. So here's a winter poem called "Winter in Havana, Cuba." I took a taxi from the hospital in Havana. I was a stranger here too long, so I ran crazed through a street fair, cackling like a mynah bird, and then fell to my knees, silent as a tractor with no spark plug. They put me into an asylum for 2 days. I told them I was American. They threatened never to let me out. I crept back to the room I rented from Mrs. Gaetti. The money in my jeans was taken, so I ran some down to the taxi driver, who seemed happy to wait. He was happy to be paid. Mrs. Gaetti was just happy I was back. She said it was lucky they ever let me out. It's December and the kitchen smells like cinnamon. I want to eat a tomato and a nectarine. I settle for a cup of chili beans, a piece of dry flatbread, a glass of beer. I yawn and my eye catches sight of the Mother Mary, copper statuette. Even cast of metal, her face is soft. I would like a handful of raisins, but we have no raisins. I walk into the street. December is the best time of year, no rain and not too hot. A breeze pulls sweat across my face, the scent of a dead cat somewhere. When I close my eyes, I could be in New York City. The whir and mumble of people, the whir and the crash of the city. In the day, I could close my eyes, but at night changes everything. There's music and alcohol, and Carlos and I wind through streets throwing stones at stray cats and more stray cats. And Mrs. Gaetti worries about the police. There's always the fear of the police.
Of Christmas casualties. Nightly hellfire visits. Right, left, right, left! And in comes the guardian of death, too, hoofing through the delights of cocaine and hot molten flesh. the oily machine gun tapestries, the morbid scene in its entirety. In the stable, a babe, a nude mother and soldier, and in an icy whisper, shimmering transparent souls are swept away into ashy night, till nothing much stands but the hallucinatory citadels and dens of immortality. An unearthly chant, "O sons, what will they leave us this time?" rings like the sound of the church bell chime, but now louder, more deliberate.
This is sort of springy. It's called Possibility of an Early Spring for Mike Kocinski and Ray Patrick. A cool, bright morning, February, late. I'm reading a young poet interviewing an older, and I'm thinking, this is how I need to write. Words where each sly line smacks away the possibility of the one before, shoves you forward, uncertain where you came from. But what if the juice I've got has been wrung out? If I should defer to the young and surprised, or the old and surprising, admit I've been hovering here dry in my nowhere middle. Then lo, I hear the rattling vibrato of a red-winged blackbird. Already? And I turn to the still winter window, and there he is, already, perched black in a nude birch, and like the younger poet had educated me just the fucking night before, that bird is the first trumpeter heralding spring. A slash of bright life on each shoulder, like mouths poised to speak. So, all right, bird, maybe there will be a spring.
I'll stay with birds. It's a poem I wrote for Bob Phillips. This is called Grackles. I think they must have been heavy equipment operators or veteran farmers in their past lives. It's all in the way they walk. I imagine their lunch pail swagger, the iridescent grease and oil stains on thick cotton work blues, the metallic sheen of daily blue jeans. They rolled when they walked back then, too, favoring distressed joints and muscles racked by use. Still, their eyes did glint and shine with avian brightness under buzzing fluorescent tubes and sunlight hung by chains from ceiling or sky. Now they wander lawns, heads cocked, purple tongues in the garden lapping up windfall mulberries, glittering insects, seeds, even bits of stone and metal, singing their guttural odes in choruses. No human memory troubles their minds. You can see it in their eyes, round and bright as rivets in a pair of bib overalls.
Well, and of course, what goes with spring other than menstruation, right? And spring, for that matter. Ode to the tampon. The purse-lurking cotton simplicity, wrapped in cardboard or plastic, looks innocent among the lipstick crayon barrette floor. Like a very dull marker or a massive white-tailed bullet shot from a Seussish bazooka. But things are not just what we imagine. They have meanings of their own. And being 6 or 8, or any age, we wonder. Both children, 6 and 8, circling their mother's tattered handbag, they look up, holding their innocence out, asking, is this the marker bullet dense puffball I've imagined? Or is it something else? And a mother remembers losing that innocence, the surprise of stains, the simple engineering of cardboard applicators seriously taking days to figure out. A mother remembers the shame of girlhood changing. The boys wondering but never asking. The men taught to be disgusted. To protect them, she tells her children the purity-crushing truth about bodies, that they ache to do simple things, that girls get used to bleeding and blood is not always pain, and simple cotton and string burn in their hand like a heavy metal melted. An innocent question turned into a wide-eyed boy and a sobbing girl, both agreeing not to tell their friends about something so scary. The girl repeating to herself that she doesn't ever want to grow up, and the boy looking up in sudden realization at his mother and asking, "So, are you bleeding right now?"
So there's absolutely no segue I can get.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and read the last poem I wrote just a few weeks ago, and it's called Letters I Never Wrote. I want you to understand that these things were normal. These things were not bad. In the 1970s, everybody smoked. It seemed so to me. A 5-year-old boy sitting in the living room full of smoke. This was me sitting there. Mornings, I practiced my ABCs in the sunrise, glowing smoke that creased the air from the slit between the drapes. A golden page of light cut through the room by the morning sun. I wrote letters with my forefinger on that page, one little finger drawing across, and the imaginary page swirled those letters in front of my eyes, sparkling eyes. It was beautiful. I didn't know then about the cancer that would take my Nana, when her always with the bronchitis, and her tissues to cough into, and her bubbly breath that I thought sounded fun had finally given in. And why my mother and father had struggled so hard to quit, my mother successfully. I want you to understand that these things were normal, but I saw something wonderful there. I practiced my letters on that glowing page. It was magical. Do you see this? It was a page of light coming through the drapes that hung over the great picture window in our living room. Just like the early light that slits the trees through the morning mist of the forest. You've seen this in photos, I'm sure. It's beautiful, like angel's wings. Like lines drawn straight to heaven, golden plates that would scatter and then slow and coalesce when you walk past. I practiced writing my letters on those pages of light, these ephemera. They were beautiful. I would wake early just to see them. Sitting hunchback on terrible carpet in front of the 5,000-pound console television in our living room, the page just appeared. My father up early for work, my mother making breakfast, toast and milk, my Nana cracking first cold beer. I want you to understand that this was normal. These things weren't bad. I want you to understand this, and that I started writing by writing letters on these first golden pages of the morning, like angel's wings. They were beautiful.
Start anew. Begin. No wheels of an injured mind turning, no. This is the happy accident of truth. Now we can share coffee by the fire and enter into a meaningful dialogue. And if the train of thought is a quiet engine, and if the day won't end, and the winter sets in your bones as you try to figure out gross miscalculations in the psyche, abandon all ritual and start anew. Begin this invention of the wheel, this reinvention. Thank you.
Okay, two small town girls. They walked along the storefronts, several boarded shut or emptied to dingy linoleum labeled "for sale" since a 2 years ago flood. They peered in the antique store and the bridal boutique with a single hopeful shopper fingering the satins, and they wished to slip into those voluminous, shimmery gowns, or lie on the lavender velvet sofa in the thrift store window, or lap the garlicky sauce wafting its warmth from the door of the diner as a man shambled out, full, unsmiling. They tipped their quick feet down the rigid sidewalk, a dry, unsettled wind whipping leafy debris against brick walls, sandstone, cinder block, the trash of the weeks of their world twitching as it landed in cold corners or stuck between curbs and the parked tires, or hurled upward toward the frayed canvas awnings, toward upper apartment windows, toward the network of suspended iron stairs no one has ever used for escape.
Are we audible to everyone? Okay, great. Amelia turned the radio down so maybe people will stop talking so loudly, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone could hear okay. I'm going to read a poem. I'm going to read a poem by John Swaile. This is a sonnet called "The Poet at 11. He liked doing this chore, burning the trash after dinner and before the sunset. The garbage would burn down to black ash. Smoke would get into his old denim jacket and make it smell. It wasn't a bad smell, not as bad as the smell he made once when he peed on the hot side of the barrel his dad bought to use as a burn bin. While he waited for the fire to burn down, he would break a branch off the willow tree, use it to spear green apples off the ground, and whip them into the neighbor's field. He would do this until the fire got cold, then go into the house and get ready for bed.
Okay, so following the homage to John Swaile, this is at John Swaile's wake, and I actually wrote this sitting at his wake. A bar and a motley crowd, knit hats and spinach salad with feta, the same crowd you've always known. We eat grapes as the gray sky breaks to sun, and of course, we find a microphone. There's always an open mic, even at a funeral. So we talk of ourselves, and only occasionally of you, and we read of ourselves and miss you in the way that poets always feel things. Ink and paper, and the unending need for attention. You're looking at me right now. And the slow emphasis that all poets learn to speak with. You, of all people, knew each word defines the next. Each poet shapes the other, and we rewrite ourselves over and over again. Because, in your own words, I don't blame you for writing it, but 90% of it can go. And you went, and left us with so much unread. What can we do but order a round of shots, joke about tomatoes and rondeau, and try to write the 10% that you couldn't edit at all?
Okay, so to keep with the John Swaile thing, and by the way, there's John. I went through a bunch of stacked photographs. I wanted to write something. I haven't written something for John. I didn't write it when he was alive, and I struggled to do it after. So I went through a bunch of photographs. I wrote down memories and essentially listed things. And this is what I'm calling an elegy for John Swaile. John of the thick glasses and tender soul. John the social worker who believed in what he was doing. John the humanitarian who kept trying. John the son, the brother. John of the piece of shit car. John of the PDA and stylist before they were cool. John the poet. John of the sonnet and the ghazal and the masastic and the rondeau and the villanelle and the translitic and the sestina and the rubaiyat. And John, I'm sure you're making that poetic form up now. John of the belly's summer sweat, John of the kidney stones and the hydronephrosis and the yawping at urinals with a tiny net to take home and show us all so proudly a pebble. John the red pen wielder, a poetic axeman, a man confident enough to chop 90% of your lines and still write and show you his crown of sonnets. John of the hot pepper jelly, John the keeper of the loaves, John of the long pause and deep breath and the adjusting of glasses at just the right moment. John of the double dactyl nightmare, the fibberty-gibberty Statue of Liberty. John the boy who refused to admit he was ever afraid. John the man who once confessed he was terrified he would have to lose his feet to diabetes. John who I once introduced as my Toledo father figure to my own father. John of the monkey shine and squinty eyes and collar and sweater. John the lonely. John the searching, who said he would find his love at the library. John who lived the rest of his life with the woman of his dreams. John of the thick fingers and soft touch. John of Crazy Jim's Blimpie Burger in Ann Arbor. It's cheaper than food. John of the red beret and sport coat. John of the French cigarettes in thin, flat boxes. John who taught me to be a writer, all you need to do is write. To be a great writer, all you need to do is believe what you're writing. John who had a mind that was difficult to trick. John who I tried to trick as often as I could. John whose last words to me were, "Okay, you can shut up now." Young John of the trombone and spats. John who crocheted hats and scarves to keep away the cold. John of the whiskey and tomatoes. John who loved the smell of wood smoke. John who told me of every time he spotted a deer. John who believed that the world of comedy had steeply fallen since the breakup of Abbott and Costello. John the Moose, Waldo, and the Reverend John Swaile. John who claimed to be able to play the euphonium and didgeridoo. John who attempted to make a didgeridoo. John whose didgeridoo was a big, fat, lovely, hollow stick. John who I never saw arrive late for anything. John who eased up when I was upset but did not stop. John who followed his skeleton down the street, out of Toledo, out of life, singing merrily about the girls of summer.
Yeah. To transcend the winter, it's just me out on a breaking limb, dressed up as if I had something to say. The injured red clay of my soul longing for company, chopping wood, carrying a tune to the dreary heart of time, that we may go forth and beyond wintry thoughts and patterns. For this is the transcendental moment. We bounce from one idea to the next, morning recruitment, the next steam engine, a song in the mid-afternoon. We call it subterranean art, and we overdose on pleasure down by the docks. And we know everything is an inside job. There's a patchwork frame from which to choose the odds and ends of your life and sew them together. With your feet up, you'll drink your wine. There's a helicopter full of poetry in your soul. Thanks.
Lighting things up. St. Patrick's Day was last week, so this weekend, so I have some limericks. I have 3, and they're horrible, and I apologize, but I'm reading them anyway.
Oh, limericks are.
Oh, come on.
Right. Okay. I knew a young poet named Johnny. Our Scottish friend found her quite bonny. He lifted his kilt, and the spear lust had built harpooned her like fresh mahi-mahi. When Adrian from West Toledo there needs to revive his libido, he tours the museum where old folks can see him in only his gold lame speedo.
Yeah!
Only one time.
You can't live that down. She won't let it go.
A poet named Mike, who loved nature, embarked on a bug hunting venture. The dance of red ants pitched a tent in his pants, and the park ranger said, "Not again, sir."
Don't be sorry. That's fantastic. Well, I guess in that case, I'll read a poem about something else that put a tent in my pants.
Only once, and I can't.
Live it down.
Totally different experience.
This is called A Birthday Gift, and this is a recent poem I wrote for the annual erotic reading that has been. I guess it's 3 years in the running now. 3 or 4 years in the running. So it's my turn to be alone with Tracy in the bathroom. It's the only door that locks. For 2 minutes, with no lights, no spies, it's our strange version of Spin the Bottle. I don't ask personal questions or request a kiss. We sit there for most of a minute, doing whatever. I twist a button in my collar. I sweat. I can hear her breathing. And just now I can feel her fingers fumbling for my hand and drawing my arm out to its full length until my hand glides under her blouse and my fingers collide with her bared breast. It's softer than anything I've ever touched. Softer than mullein leaves. My friend's mom raises chinchillas whose pelts don't compare to the dulcet sweetness of the skin. I only wish I could see the nipples' stormy pinkness, the areola's starburst radiance, and the blue evidence of blood flowing at a rate of 3 feet per second throughout that perfect architecture. When the 2 minutes is up, knock rattles my teeth. She pushes my hand down like we are caught and flips on the light. Flush and embarrassed, she opens the door, and I linger until the blood settling between my legs picks up speed, and I can walk out casual, with no evidence of what we were up to. Where there's cake and cold pizza, but nothing so wonderful as what I just beheld. This first contact, a phantom desire that's never waned, this velvet memory that fills my hand.
Okay, so this is a very old, sexy poem. It's called Bar Wish. I want this beer to be cooler. Drops rushing down the sides, puddling themselves as I listen to his plans for a new novel. I want the senseless chatter surrounding us to cease, or waltz itself slowly in with the jukebox country music. I want not to look like I'm undressing him, but have him feel it anyway, in his bones, like the feeling of rain. I want to lick his teeth, where his words peek out, uneven and stumbling over themselves to go out with hot breath. I want to grab his thigh, feel something tense holding him up, trembling under my fingertips. I want his heart to be a fire. Relearn the art of bleeding and forget that clock he keeps checking with the turn of his wrist. I want his watch to break.
Right, so I'm going to read a translytic that John Swaile wrote. It's called Poetry Almanac Material. Giant Gina and foul-mouthed Della are my two best friends. Their father is a retired carnival barker. We all live in a commune on the sea. Summer nights we bring baskets filled with bologna sandwiches to the pier and listen to opera coming from the big ships in the straits. They have my affections. They fill my fantasies. In them, Gina lights me on fire, fancies me as her idol and king. She brings me cognac and beer. I weigh her body against against the grand old ogre Della, and find them equal in all things, good and bad. The girls vend liters of cold drinks on the beach. They are beautiful alone, but aren't the two of them together mortal marvels? They make the dunes bright. They alter the minutes of my day. They are neon pink sculptures. They are fat pie slices. They are quiet animals. They are divine craziness. They are pretend vultures sitting on a crooked branch.
I wrote some cantos this last winter, and this is the first one called Jeanette. Now like flowers we have discovered light, the twisted light on the stairway moving upward, because she chose to dance, because once she showed us light. She is Jeanette. I think she is pretty, the way she sits there, nothing doing, a little king's in her hand, closed on the line in Robert Frost. She is divine and moving into the vision. She is Jeanette. And we put on some style, carry on after anything. The Holy Spirit, the smart little drinks down by the water, the overflow of love, and how we got here is pointless. For I have noticed a tightening of the wire as we go along nearer the shore.
This is called The Lover in the Cafe. The lover is back, home from Chicago, sitting at the corner table with a notebook, chewing the end of her pen, pretending she hadn't driven 90 on the turnpike to arrive that much sooner, watching her old girlfriend wait on tables, watching her smile at customers, thinking the smile is brighter now, like candy, bigger, more real, wishing it wasn't. The lover watches, thinks the old girlfriend looks thinner, same skirt but it's looser, drapes on her hip bones as if to remind her they exist, remind her of cupping them soft and tight in her palms. The lover thinks the old girlfriend's hair is shorter. Nice. Maybe someone asked her to cut it. Maybe smoothing it for her, tucking it back behind her ears because it never stayed there, because hair never stays the way you need it to.
So my son gave me a cold, and I'm a little snotty. But I'm sitting up here thinking about Sam and Andy's and the reading, and one of the first pieces of advice Nick Muska ever gave me was to stop clearing my throat while I was reading. And I never did it again until tonight because I can't help it. Also, I love how poetry reminds how it touches everything else. Like, I'm listening to my friends who I've been writing poetry with them for like 15 years now. And Michael says something about little kings in a poem, and I remember my dad, who was not a drinker, always had little kings in the fridge when I was a kid. There was just at least that much beer in the refrigerator when I was small. So poetry does that. I guess like having a long, long conversation over a beer does that too. But this is a poem for Ray Patrick. It's called "Everyone Who Breathes Wants to Live," which is a line of his poetry, even if he doesn't remember that he wrote it. Angels' things don't wear out, not their lungs or dicks or stomachs, never their unbroken hearts, never their hearts or guitars. God keeps them whole for praise and watches pieces of his human children fall off until we beg him to take us back for good. The young girls in their church clothes fall asleep reading the Gospels. The white crescents of their panties wink like eyes under pleated skirts. Great lust that must be fed. Hunger that angels don't feel or understand. Aren't we the most fleeting things of all? Naked, we are more than naked, and can't comprehend the great beauty of it in the shower, or the dark bedroom, or in the back seat of a '57 Buick, getting the leather all wet. Tastes we love may never touch our tongues again. The grass won't always smell so green, will never fit so right as it does lying down under birds and clouds as they pass like minutes of time allotted by God. Breathe. One less breath you have to take. One breath closer to the white light. Breathe again. I won't be there to see God lift you up, smaller than one of his brown fingernails, folded like a child in his palm, holier than hands at a prayer meeting. Everyone who breathes wants to live, and live until they're old, and it's all got to be written down. The names we loved but can't remember, the white dog we'd like to have back, blue lights in the back of a hearse glowing, and the young girl asking you to follow her. Everything that angels never get to think about. They get the power and the glory. We get to breathe. We get one memory of darkness and another one of light, world with and without. Amen.
So this is a John Swaile poem, A Sistina, because they were quite often formed. Faux biography. This is my life as I remember it. I played the witch in a kindergarten production of Hansel and Gretel. One night, soon after, I wrote some poems. The showpiece? A poem about social phobias. My first poems were praised by Gary Snyder. Identifying with Gary Snyder, I went to Japan, lived in the mountains. It was a mistake that led to a phobia of open spaces. My flower garden was the only outdoor space I used. I grew show-quality antique roses. They earned me one prize after another. I became one of the greatest experts on Gary Snyder and antique roses. The fame pleased the showman in me, but I soon grew tired of it all. The fame, the endorsements, the garden show on PBS. The old phobia was replaced by a new antipodal phobia. I became afraid of being alone. I started an inner city garden program, wrote the poems of Gary Snyder on ivy, on the sides of buildings. It was beautiful, but I was in the shallow shoals of my life. I had nothing lasting to show for my work. This was not a phobia, but a deeper need. Sitting in my moonlit garden, I would wish on the stars for someone to share my life, my love for Gary Snyder, my poetry, my antique rose garden. I decided to travel, to tour the gardens of the world. I met many women, tried to show my love. None of them knew Gary Snyder's poetry, showed sympathy for my phobias. I stopped trying, went home, stocked up on soup for one. I decided there were worse things than being a hermit. That's it. My life revolves around my garden. If someone comes to my door, I'll show them poems about phobias and Gary Snyder.
This is a poem called What We Will Do. We will share coffee on cold mornings and poke our fingers into the steam. We will drink and say, tastes good. We will enjoy ourselves and one another. We will wear warm clothes and take walks, wool socks and long johns. We will pull red leaves from trees, make piles of them precariously high, and then we'll kick them over. We will have pets, and some pets will run away. Those that don't will die at ripe old ages with arthritic shoulders that will rub when they nuzzle us. We will barbecue in autumn. We will walk on cliffs' edges and swim in oceans. We will remark how steep the cliffs are, how cold the water. We will feel things with our fingers. We will attend funerals and we'll say, God rest their souls. We'll pay our respects and then we'll play. We will converse without speaking, touch each other's eyelids. We will lie down, tangle legs together, whisper with our fingers. We will eat peaches.
Dear Jeanette, what should be lauded is that you have the potential. The wheels turning. Oh yes, indeed. You're like the third train at supper. You're the wind in my hippie hair. You are time sliced luscious, halved perfectly, so as we are endlessly kissing with brandied tongues. The last lines come hard for you while I sit in my easy chair listening to the winter pipes rattle in this old, abused building. Come back with me to a time I do not recall, back to cornfields and fireworks. Come back to Ohio. We could start out along the water's edge where we dream and become rich in this aspect. We will have a life.
I'm going to read one by Lori. This is called Centered. I watch a man in a cafe fold a slice of bread as if he is folding a birth certificate or looking at the photograph of a dead lover. He bites through the crease and reopens it, admiring the nearly perfect circle he has removed from the slice. Using his knife like a scalpel, he painstakingly cuts the yolk from one of his eggs. There is an odd slickness to the knife, leftover grease from many guests before. Carefully, he places the yolk inside the circle hole and half smiles. This is the greatest thing he will accomplish all day.
I'm going to read a poem I wrote for John. Many of you might know John wrote a series of poems for the Van Gogh exhibit that the museum hosted, all of the landscapes. So John went through and wrote one poem. There were 27 of them for each painting, and it was sort of like a walkthrough tour. And basically he just read Van Gogh's letters to his brother and composed poems out of these sort of experiences. So this is a poem for John based on that work called Van Gogh Knows. Van Gogh, you know seasons pass one into the other without pause. Paint all day, wrestle angels all night. Vincent, why bristle at the cold snow and squander paint on sunlit days? Yesterday the iris's new blossoms were perfect, purple as aubergine, as a satin Easter sash, as grackle sheen. Maybe this year it'll be June all summer long. You can paint daily flowers. In spite of your gruff rebuttals, bad temper, and absent rages, the world hasn't abandoned you, Vincent. Do you think the sun makes feeble promises instead of iris blossoms? There's plenty of yellow wheat out there to paint, and evergreens rocketing the blue sky, scraping the floor of heaven and trapping flocks of stars in their dark boughs. Vincent, think how close you are to the Lord, out in his wild fields and towns, with the names of so many flowers, children, and colors on your tongue. You have the lamentations of coal miners and potato farmers ringing in your good ear. Oh well. So now you know the bitterness of fingers too, the stooping back's hatred for all things growing or buried in the ground. We all have windows, Vincent. The sun can enter any home whenever it likes and give us gold. Gold, Vincent. You have eyes. You know the way they eat color, handle every shape like caressing a lover, and follow the horizon where the end of all things waits and waits. Ask and receive, Vincent. Be still. Look at all you have wrought. You know the Lord has provided. He's given you this whole world to make with paint. Walk out any door with your new hat pulled rakishly over your eyes. Soil those new boots. You're fitted out afresh, man. Don't let bitterness enter your heart. Pray for peace and paint. Paint, Vincent, until the sun or candle sputters out.
Okay, this is another Lori poem, and I think it's worth noting what different people bring to a group. I think John brought editing, but then also brought the social work aspect. There's a bigger world than whatever you're experiencing right now, and that was a huge thing for us. And what Lori brought was actually growing up, because we met at her house, but she had a family. We weren't there yet, and she had that. She was doing that. So this is a poem to that. And Mother's Nature. My son's first. This is Lori's poem, by the way. My son's first thunderstorm erupts as he sits in his high chair, eating macaroni alphabets and cheese, holding his red pretty balloon. Daniel, from a quiet place, is speaking, but I cannot hear him over the clap. I turn then to meet my son's eyes, so wide and almost pleading. I'm suddenly afraid too. The enormous realization that I stand as the center of someone's reality. To this child, I'm infallible. Boom! In this cross-section of our lives, we silently sit, eyes locked, and for a moment, unable to cry.
Somehow related. I grew up in the country, and when you live in a farm that slaughters animals, you get used to the idea of where meat comes from pretty quickly. So this is a poem about me imagining, explaining the same thing I went through to my own children, and it's called Autumn Sounds. They were simple sounds we heard from far away. The air cool and so tall the hills, the light, our shadows longer into the sun. All our bodies bent, double back, and the low light churr of sunup. We walked too close. The slaughterhouse stood deep gray in the hung dust of morning fog. We walked closer, the faint smells now echoing down the hill, growing sharper. But up we went, in our skin, in our full bodies grown large, in our world ripened round. Frost turned to dew under the autumn morning's moon, under the shadow of the slaughterhouse, above us all as we reached it. Those peculiar looks on the faces of my children, shining, leaning against the wall, listening through the wall to those sounds, autumn sounds. The sound drew us up the hill, but the smell that morning, like wet steel and musk, the smell drew them to the door to peek through with shining faces and child's eyes. My loves, it isn't easy. Their faces now gone mute, muffled breaths of white steam, quick through gaped mouths, as inside lines of pigs and chickens, pigs they had ridden in the summer, hung, inverted in lines, efficiently straight, hooves tied together, gutted, rib cages exposed like bloody hearts, mouths wide, soundless. It's been a good year, I said. My children stood weak-kneed at the slaughterhouse door, the autumn sun cresting the hills, sweeping the fog invisible back to the sky. We walked back to the house slowly, quietly, but for the rhythmic trudge through knee-deep wet grass. I watched their faces, they watched their feet. Some thoughts have nowhere to go, but they'll get there in autumn. Next summer, when my children feed the pigs, they will do so thoughtfully. They will remember why their bodies have grown larger, fuller. They will keep quiet count of time, keep count of its worth.
Some poets are out of themselves completely, and some are lazy. Some poets will despise you as you set out to do simply great things. Some poets are windows. Some poets like violin and strong drink and such. Some are in a rush. Some poets are condemned to dissertation in dusty rooms. Some have an ear for the poem. Some failed 8th grade science class and some join the team. Some are throwaway like cardboard boxes of dead weight. Some are cowboys. Some poets have one bad digit. The greatest poets come through this way from time to time and decide to stay a while.
I lost my father in November, and today would have been his 68th birthday, so I feel like I should read something for my dad. This is The Grass That It Is. As if February weren't bastard enough, Lake Erie rejected my father's ashes, strewn, blown to dinginess atop the ice, refusing to swallow, to digest, to feed what lies below in the cold rhythm. In my childhood garden, he snipped asparagus and zinnias in a bait bucket together, green thumbs and electric petals. He taught me to harvest night crawlers for the weekend's fishing. He knived swelled tomatoes, fed me the warm wedges, plucked sugar snap peas, tucking them into my pockets for an afternoon's worth of crunch, hauled crates of zucchini and crooknecks to his coworkers, grateful and befuddled, plunged fists into the soil for jeweled beets to slice with Lake Erie perch, and picked strawberries for shortcake, enough to call the neighbors over. Today, February rains a glaze of ice to my brown lawn, my frozen garden mud. I chop a waxed grocery bell pepper, peel the fibrous ends of a pound of asparagus, revealing itself as the grass that it is.
Part of our discussion about the reading tonight had a lot to do with sort of not just thinking about John, which we did a lot of talking, but like the gratitude that we all had in a way for the group of us meeting, and then Sam and Andy's happening, and like all the poets who were professors and professionals and like thugs and etc. who participated with us, you know. And I was listening to Kerry read, and I was thinking about a time when we were here. One time I was talking to Joel, who is a mentor to all of us up here pretty much, and he sort of warned me against writing about family explicitly. He didn't say, don't write about your family, but there's this challenge to like be overwrought, to be overly sentimental in a way that I'm guilty of doing in my daily life on a regular basis, but poems about family really crush, and then Kerry writes that poem. You can't say that about that poem. But anyway, I'm going to break that rule again and read a poem about my children. This is called Quickening. At my daughter's cross-country meet, I walked through piles of wind-heaped maple leaves with my son. He's 2 years old, and the leaves are bigger than his hands. We drag our feet through them and kick those scarlet and yellow spanners up and watch them tumble in the breeze like these high school runners, almost light as air as they stream by in their silk jerseys blazing with color and bright sneakers studded with mud. My daughter emerges from the woods running across the soccer field, approaching the last leg of the race. She's red-faced, striding out the final yards. She's graceful, perfect joints greased with sunlight, quiet and weightless as a white-tailed deer at full speed. Her brother calls her name, breaks my grip on his coat, and runs across the chalk lines defining the course. He wants to run too, and merges with the stream of runners shrinking again in the distance. So many wind-blown leaves on their way to the finish line.
Nice.
So, of course, on the day of John Swaile's wake, we had a erotic poetry reading. Because we're classy like that. So this is Afterglow for John Swaile on the day of his wake. It doesn't always end with a bang. Sometimes it sneaks up on you, builds upon itself quietly until you could hold out no longer, and seized, exhausted, excited, and sweating, skin tingling almost too much to touch. I roll things over in my mind, what I almost did perfectly. Did you like it? Do you want more? What we'll absolutely need to do again. How you looked at just that moment and the next, and when you thought I wasn't looking. I want to say something grand, something that makes you laugh or stop and hold your breath and say how very, very wonderful. But it's late, and already you're asleep.
I can't even decide. I'm trying to figure out how to, we're gonna take a break after this, and then we will open it up to, we'll have a little list or something and open up to open mic and go from there. But I'm trying to figure out how to end it on sort of like an upbeat note, and I find that I have absolutely nothing that's upbeat. It's the first time I've realized this, but.
More elaborate.
Kerry, get on it.
This is a poem called Times to Remember, and it seems really glum. Okay, well this is a poem by Lori, super fast. It's called What I Want Out of My Sex Life. Lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah! That was nice.
So this is, I feel that it's kind of upbeat because it is, to me, it's a matter of keeping your mind on what's important, even when things are bleak. And it's called Times to Remember. My sister sent me a notebook, 200 blank pages bound in marbled leather with a gold-rimmed bookmark, etched with a Navajo proverb. She wrote a message to me on the inside cover telling me she loves me. She hopes I fill it with happy poems. A gift for me on Christmas of 1992. I haven't written in it yet because I haven't filled my other notebooks. Those, too, given to me by others who love me. And those notebooks that I found with curling pages and glue and plastic. And there are those times when I'm primed for this world, when music brings out words in my head. Times when my car is enough to bring out words, or the moon is enough, or the babbling stink of the Maumee River, or the babbling song of the purple lady on Cherry Street. are enough to bring out words. They bring out words. There are times when it's easy and I open and flow, times when I can recall things in safety and feel them just fall out of me onto paper. And then there are those times when the ink that runs could as easily be blood, when I clutch at my pen like holding a nail. Times when the men that I see plod through nighttime streets like dirty diesel machines. There are times when the ink is blood and it is wine and the pen is the nail and you have to run because you're just no Jesus. There are times when ink pens are luxuries. Let us not forget these times either. Times when death grabbed our friends with intimate words and they leapt for safety into some nightmare anonymous. There are times to find yourself under bridges where desperate people go to do desperate things. These are the times to start new notebooks. These are the times to remember because not everyone makes it back. Not everyone finds himself eventually back to safety, where family is free to send gifts and blessings. These are the times when a hot cup of coffee didn't just save your ass from freezing on the pavement. Please feel free to donate a little something extra to the Cherry Street Mission. Buy some cookies, buy some books, and a few 10 minutes or so we can reconvene and have a little open mic deal. Do we want to get a sign up?
Yes.
All right. We're here for John Swaile.